In this tutorial, we will create a Java module that will use the JDBC driver manager to connect to the MariaDB charity database in order to access the database from within our Java code. For my YouTube students, this slideshow is part of a YouTube playlist. The playlist URL will be listed in the description and comments of this lesson. All source code for this playlist will be available for free in a GitHub repository. These are the high-level steps we will perform in this lesson. First, we will create a new Java module and we will name it JDBC1. We will use Maven in IntelliJ to create this module. Then we will write the driver manager application that gets the JDBC connection. And finally, we will use a JUnit 5 test driver to test our JDBC connection. We will be connecting to the database using the same JDBC driver manager that we used through IntelliJ to connect to the database. The driver manager is a fully implemented class that connects an application to a data source in which you specify the database URL. When this class first attempts to establish a connection, it automatically loads any JDBC4 drivers found within the class path. Back in IntelliJ, and we'll start by having a look at our Git branch. This is our Git starting branch. So now inside our Spring JDBC IntelliJ project, we will create a new module. And we won't be using an archetype. We will name it JDBC1. Looking at our artifact coordinates, this is our group ID, our artifact ID, and we say finish. And we'll add our POM file to Git. We see immediately there's a problem here. We're actually using Java 11 and not Java 15. Let's make sure that that is reflected in our project settings. We'll set Java 11 as our project SDK, our modules. Apply, say OK. Let's make sure that that is reflected in our Maven POM files. That should take care of that for now. And now we can go back to our newly created JDBC1 module. And we'll create a new package. And in the package, we create our new driver manager class. And inside our driver manager class, we will stub out our get connection. For now, we will just return null. We will generate a test for our class. We specify our test as JUnit 5. We create a setup or before. And we see that it is trying to import the JUnit package, which means we have to add the Maven dependency. And we will add the Maven dependency 571. Let's go and have a look at what our POM file looks like now. And we see that added a dependency section with the dependency of JUnit Jupyter 571. And now, since we are here in the dependencies section of Maven, we also need to add the driver manager so that we can access the database. So let's have a look at our database. And let's have a look at our data source properties. And we see data sources and drivers. And we see it's got the mariadb driver. It's got the settings, the username and password, database, and URL. And it's got a default connection type. So if we click on driver, it's using MariaDB Connector J version 2.7.3. It's using the org mariadb JDBC driver class. And this is the driver that we also want to add to our Maven dependencies. So let's find the driver in a Maven repo. Here we are in the Maven repository, and we see that the mariadb-java-client 2.7.3 is listed here, and here the dependency entry is listed for us. And we'll update Maven. And now it has the DriverManager class on the class path thanks to Maven. So now we can go back and actually write our code. Now the first thing we need to do is we actually need to have a way of getting all of these entries into our DriverManager wrapper. And in order to save time, I'll be cutting and pasting. We see this is all our entries required for a DriverManager. We will generate the getters and setters. And now we can write our get connection method to use the DriverManager. We will set up a properties object and set the username and password. And we will make sure that we're using MariaDB. And then we will get the DriverManager connection. And finally, we will print the connection and return it. So essentially, this is a try catch that gets the connection. Let's just update it to get the properties through the getters. And now we can test our connection. In order to test our connection, we will create the DriverManager class first, and then we will set up all the properties used by the DriverManager application. This is all the properties going into our DriverManager. And now we can actually test the connection. And as we can see, this is a try with resources. And what we do here is we get the catalog, then we assert that the catalog is in fact the charity database. So let's see what happens if we run our Maven tests. Now that is interesting. We've run our test, but it says 0 test has been run. And that probably means we need to go back and look at our Maven POM file some more. We probably need something like a JUnit 5 plugin. So let's have a look at the JUnit 5 official documentation related to Maven. So here we are in the official JUnit 5 documentation. And it said, starting with version 2.22, Maven Surefire and Maven Failsafe provide native support for executing tests on the JUnit platform, and it provides us with a link to the example. So let's have a look at that link. And let's have a look at this POM file. So essentially, when you specify the compiler as 381 and the Surefire as 222.2, should be enabling running the JUnit tests. So let's add this to our own Maven parent POM. Update Maven. And now let's go back to the official JUnit 5 documentation and see what other dependencies we need to add. So we looked at the starter demo project, which means we added this to our parent POM. And now we're looking at the dependencies. And it looks like we need to add the API and the Jupyter engine. So we will add this to our JDBC 1 project. So we have the API and the engine. Update Maven. All right, let's see what happens if we run Maven clean install here. And that looks much better. We've got one test running. We actually see the output from the test. We can also run this from within IntelliJ in another way. Run DriverManager test. And we see the test succeeded. So now we have Java code that uses the mariadb driver manager to connect to the database. And this concludes this lesson.